The United States is a society based on the rule of law, and our founding fathers believed that if they did not base their law on a higher authority, then whoever was in power would determine what the law said. They called this tyranny.
We said there's a higher authority than king or government that gives us these rights because we are human beings. And if we lose that, we lose the very purposes of our institutions, but we also lose any legitimate claim to oppose tyrannical actions by any government.
Their higher authority was the law of God, the Ten Commandments.
The moral principles and precepts contained in the Scriptures ought to form the basis of all our civil constitutions and laws. Noah Webster.
The sanctions of religion compose the foundations of good government, and the ethics, doctrines, and examples furnished by Christianity exhibit the best models for the laws. DeWitt Clinton, United States Senator.
In several notable cases through the years, including Stone versus Graham and the most recent Van Orden versus Perry and McCreary County versus ACLU, the display of 10 Commandments on public property has been brought into question. Is it right for the government to acknowledge their influence on American legal thought? Or should they be entirely removed from public land?
I represented Thomas Van Orden in the United States Supreme Court. He brought a lawsuit challenging a 6-foot-high, 3-foot-wide 10 Commandments monument that sits between the Texas State Capitol and the Texas Supreme Court. If you put the 10 Commandments by themselves, it creates the impression that it is the foundation of the American legal system. If the 10 Commandments were there, along with many other symbols, as a foundation, I would have no objection. But it is factually wrong to say it is the foundation. To say it's the foundation really is endorsing religion.
The High Court ruled in Van Orden that 10 Commandments displays do not violate the Establishment Clause if they are passive markers for the historical influence of religion on government. Yet it simultaneously ruled in McCreary County that 10 Commandments displays are unconstitutional if their primary purpose is to communicate historical influence of religion on government.
The context within which these moral values arose was a religious context, and it will always have a religious connotation. Recognizing the historical religious origins of these values does not impose a duty on anyone to believe in the God from whom these values were originally derived or expressed in the 10 Commandments.
Yeah, let me explain why I think the stakes on this fight are so high in getting this notion of inalienable rights given to us by a creator, not by government. Why the stakes of this fight are so high. I mean, think about it. If the only thing that defines right and wrong, just and unjust, lawful and unlawful, is whatever some majority decides to do or some government institution, then by what right did we ever have to say that what Hitler did after coming to power in Nazi Germany was wrong?
Can the liberties of a nation be secure when we have removed a conviction that these liberties are the gift of God? Thomas Jefferson.
In his delivery of the majority opinion in Van Orden, Chief Justice Rehnquist cataloged various examples of federal buildings in the very Capitol that recognize the role the Decalogue has played in America's heritage. He noted, not only is there a relief of Moses in the United States House chamber, amidst other secular and religious lawgivers, but in the Library of Congress, there is a large statue of Moses holding the 10 Commandments. And in the Department of Justice, a statue including the 10 Commandments inside, as well as a medallion depicting the 10 Commandments on the floor of the National Archives. But most ironic of all are the many sculpted depictions of Moses or the 10 Commandments on the Supreme Court building itself, on the south courtroom phrase of the chamber, on the stone carvings of the east pediment, engraved on the large oak doors of the chamber, on the support frame of the courtroom's bronze gate, and twice in the Great Hall metapiece. In opposition to Van Orden, a new majority in McCreary claimed that monuments to Moses and the 10 Commandments are drained of their religious purpose, and therefore their religious authority when placed in historical context with other lawgivers or historical references. But the question remains, without a transcendent religious authority, what is the ultimate standard for legal adjudication?
But where's your notion of higher authority? If you're rejecting any claim of higher authority that comes from religion, where is your source of higher authority? Is it Earl Warren or William Brennan's own predilections? And if that's all it is, why should the rest of us go along with them?
Some believe the Supreme Court is in fact the final authority in such disputes.
We are under a Constitution, but the Constitution is what the judges say it is. Justice Charles Evans Hughes, 1930.
But critics claim that the justices have replaced the religious supreme being with the secular Supreme Court as the final authority. The founders penned the First Amendment in part to protect their new nation from the excesses of religious establishment. But at the same time, they were convinced that without a higher authority, there is no protection from the excesses of government.
Those who will not be governed by God will be ruled by tyrants. William Penn, Founding Father.